Hello everyone, welcome to this live on narcissists and avoidance. This is a conversation where I'll be joined with my colleague Adriana Bucci, who is a narcissistic recovery coach, and I am joining obviously to talk about avoidancy and how it manifests and how it's actually quite linked to narcissism. Hello everyone who's joining this live. When Adriana joins, I will get this conversation started. Here she is, beautiful. And hello to everyone who's joining this live today. It's really exciting that we're going to be having this conversation. Also, to anyone who has questions, please put them in the chat and we will get around to them. Hooray, we're here.
Hey!
And no tech issues, hooray.
Thank God. Oh my gosh.
So nice not to have that. So
Honestly.
Firstly, can you hear me or not?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. I was worried for a hot second there. I was thinking, oh, not again.
I know, oh my God. No, we're good.
Sweet. So firstly, would you like to introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Adriana Bucci. I'm a certified trauma-informed life coach based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I help empower survivors of narcissistic abuse to heal, set boundaries, and live life on their own terms. And I'm a fellow survivor of maternal narcissism. I dated a bunch of narcs before I met my husband, and I worked with a lot of narcissists as well, so I know them all too well. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. And I'm Ken. I'm a counsellor here in Sydney, Australia. I'm mostly focusing on helping people to recover off the back of breakups, relationship counselling, doing a lot of inner work and doing a lot of trauma-informed care. But seemingly most of my audience comes because I talk a lot about avoidancy and how it impacts and obviously disrupts people's romantic relationships. So we thought this would be a good conversation to have today because avoidance, and I'm using that word very loosely, and narcissists actually have a lot of correlation, a lot of links, and there is a bit of causation from narc parents to people who develop avoidancy. So I figured, Adriana, I'd let you take the reins and talk about narcissists, what they are, who they are, what they do, and then I can add my 2 cents a little bit after that to talk about avoidance.
Sounds good. So yeah, narcissists are people who just want to get supply out of other people. That's like the easiest way to describe it, honestly. Like you can go down the Google rabbit holes and find the lists of like the top 10 signs or whatever, but that can get very confusing because they don't all do the exact same things, like exactly like every narcissist does. Everything is very similar, but you know, the tactics are all the same and the emotions that they use to manipulate you with are all the same, but some of the specifics can be different. So pretty much if you are dealing with somebody who is inducing a state of fear, shame, guilt, sense of obligation, or confusion within you, that is a red flag that you're dealing with a narcissist. And they basically just want to get emotional reactions out of people. It's called narcissistic supply. It makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever if your brain is not wired that way. So you can really like go insane trying to figure it out. At the end of the day, what matters is has this person made you feel less than? Is there an obvious cycle of love bomb, devalue, and discard with this person? Because that's another massive red flag. And, you know, you end up reminiscing on the love bombing times, hoping that those times will happen all over again. And that's like really what you end up wishing for in these relationships with narcissists. And it's really just a cycle at the end of the day of love bomb, devalue, discard. And, you know, narcissists, they can be arrogant, they can be condescending. Sometimes they are very covert though, and you can't tell that they're a narcissist. And those are the ones you kind of have to watch out for because they can come off as very charming or very shy or vulnerable or, you know, whatever. And it's really just a ploy to gain your trust, which is what the love bombing is all about. And then once they gain your trust, they start abusing you. But what you have to understand is that the love bombing was also abuse to begin with because it was all bullshit. It was never genuine at the end of the day. So I hope that explains it.
It does. And I might throw in my own 2 cents too to add to what you've shared. I find that narcissistic love bombing is usually about domination, control, and wanting to own someone. Mm-hmm. And usually the minute they get you, that's when everything drops, the facade goes, the mask of, you know, charm just drops. Yes, avoidance do love bomb, but we'll talk about the differences there because it's a very different kind of love bombing. The love bombing of a narcissist just feels over the top a lot of the times. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels really just full on like, you're my soulmate. And after like date 2 or like, you know, I want to move in with you. Let's get married. And they may have also started out by being really condescending to you as well too, in that it's very much marked with a lot of intentionality. And when everything goes into that devalue phase, there's a lot of cruelty. There's a lot of disappointment which they project onto you. And it's not usually these situations which last for like a short period of time. Like if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, like a true NPD narcissist, they don't usually drop you like a hot potato at the beginning, like in that devalue phase. That devalue phase can actually go on for quite some time, and it usually can be quite protracted. And the discard phase can look like all kinds of things. Some of them won't even discard you at all, but there is this real sense of like humongous self-loathing that they project onto you. They're miserable the entire time, and generally speaking, they're just not very happy people. And you can kind of see that the more that you get into it. Very different from like your standard person who has avoidant attachment related stuff going on too. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that in there too, because there's a lot of manipulation and control that's very intentional with narcissist.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's done with a purpose of, gaining control over you and, you know, basically putting you in that emotional state of guilt, shame, or fear so that you are easier to control, because anyone in those states becomes easier to control. And I don't know a whole lot about avoidance, so I will let you talk all about that.
I'll try to make this a quick TED talk. So basically, avoidance, and I'm using this word very loosely because it's not a diagnosis, and we're not talking about avoidant personality disorder, even though that's its own thing. When I refer to avoidancy, I'm referring to avoidant attachment, which is someone who exhibits a conscious fear of intimacy and a subconscious fear of abandonment. So these are the individuals, and Adriana, I think you'll be familiar with this. These are the individuals in dating who can appear really into you, who sound and feel genuinely really into you when they're dating you. And then as you get to know them, they start to distance themselves from you. They might say things like, oh, everything's fine. I'm just really busy at work. And they may abruptly break up with you a few days later being like, yeah, I actually don't think I'm meant for a relationship. Even if they said that like literally 2 days ago, they wanted to be in a relationship with you. And here's the rub. A lot of these individuals do have a very similar style to narcissists in that the love bombing phase exists, but the kicker is it's not intentional. Usually it's much more genuine in that they're like, no, I'm genuinely into this person. And it's not about trying to control or manipulate the person that they're with. And this is where it becomes really painful, because usually when you're dating a person like this, you can tell that, well, you usually feel very confused, but a part of you also knows, no, I think this person actually genuinely has a bit of care for me. But because they usually distance themselves as time progresses and they feel really flooded with a lot of fear, you're also getting that confusion, which is, does this person even like me or not? It's not the same where when you're in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, where the dominant emotions I find for a lot of people is just fear and also terror. With an avoidant, there's more anxiety about the fact that it's like, I don't know if this fucking person likes me or not. And
Makes a lot of
usually
sense.
when you are in a like relationship with an avoidant attacher, where it's quite severe in their trauma around intimacy and commitment, typically you find that they're not so much miserable, they're more just withdrawn. They may take times where they just like stonewall you and don't want to deal with you. And they may say condescending things to you, but usually they can sometimes recognize what they're doing and apologize to you. But generally speaking, they're not very emotionally well attuned at times to what's going on. So the rub can be that you can have the exact phases of a narcissist with someone like an avoidant attacher, but the love bombing is more genuine. The devaluing and discard can sometimes happen all at once, and you don't even really notice what's going on when they abruptly drop you. But if they do protract it, they may cheat on you like a narcissist, but sometimes they're doing that because they hate feeling enmeshed with a partner. They don't want to lose their independence when they're with a partner, and they think, you know what, I need to get out of this. And sometimes they just meet someone or are sexting people online because that's their way of creating distance from you in a relationship. Not an excuse for their behavior, but that's sometimes how it goes, and it can feel like narcissism. And in fact, many of these people have come from narcissistic families.
That makes a lot of sense. And so would you say, like, with avoidance, the cycle of abuse probably happens faster?
Yes, because usually there's rapid intensity. Like, here's the thing. I think where a narcissist, I feel like, is more protracted over a longer period of time. I think avoidant trauma bonding happens very quickly and the phase comes and goes. And I think the kicker is people are usually broken up with during the honeymoon phase. And when you're dating a narcissist, I think the other thing too is when their cruelty spills out and you see the mask drop, you're sort of like, oh, now I know what I'm dealing with. This person's an asshole. Whereas with an avoidant, you'll rarely ever see a bad thing about them if they drop you. Most of the time I get clients who are like, but this was my person. I thought they were amazing. And you know what? For the most part, they actually were a genuinely great looking and sounding person. But if you don't understand how trauma works, and also when this is the kick up, when these people shut down, for them, when they get flooded with anxiety, they go into their freeze and flight mode where sometimes they're just like, I can't be here. I've heard accounts of people where they've dated their loved ones where these individuals look like they're actually having a panic attack being around their lover and they just don't have any emotional expression. They'll sometimes break up with you and it looks like they don't have a care for you in the world and it seems like they don't actually have any interest in you, which is why so many people are like, was this ever real? Like, did you actually care? And the answer is actually they did, but when they shut down, all of that emotion goes.
That makes a lot of sense. Now here's a kicker. Can do narcissists pretend they're avoidants sometimes just to fuck with
Ooh.
people?
That
I'm
is a
sure
really
they do.
difficult question to answer. I know occasionally I throw you curveball questions, but now you've really hit me with one.
Sorry, bamboozled you.
That's okay. Short answer is I think that some narcissists can have avoidant attachment. And I've heard accounts of some narcissists where they can have a lot of that. What they'll do is they will intentionally withdraw from someone. They'll intentionally go no contact from someone or block people to punish the person that they're dating. But I don't think I've ever heard of an account of a narcissist being like, you know what? I'm gonna do my research on avoidant attachment style
So
and
true.
fuck with someone just to get them. Maybe a sociopath might do that, but I've never heard of an account of a narc doing that before too.
Fair enough.
But the personality disorder can coexist with avoidant attachment.
That makes sense. Awesome.
So it's quite different. But I think that what I will say though, this is where I think you would come in with your expertise on narcissism is a lot of times if you've grown up with a narcissistic parent, hello you know, if you're under the thumb of a narcissistic parent and they're also like, say, you know, sleeping in your bed, showering with you, or, you know, condescending you, being like, you're just like your father, and also constantly demeaning and belittling your choices in life, that can cause a person to go the avoidant route where they just suppress their emotions. They say things like, yeah, I'm fine, when they're not. And they also struggle to feel safe in healthy, intimate relationships because that's uncomfortable for them. They've never been in a self-caring environment too. So I'll throw it over to you and be like, I'd love it if you could explain for people, you know, what being involved with a narcissistic parent is like and how that can also have a detrimental impact on children growing up.
Yeah, it's a shit show.
No shit.
I was raised by a narcissistic mother. And when I did the attachment style quiz, I scored high on disorganized attachment style. And yeah, I still don't like, I'm not like an expert on attachment styles. Obviously, I'll let you chime in on that if you want to, but it made a lot of sense to me, but it also makes sense that someone would end up being avoidant after being raised by a narcissistic parent. But I will answer your question first. What's it like to be raised by a narcissistic parent? It's a nightmare. And the thing is, you don't realize that it's a nightmare until you realize that it's a nightmare. So you go through your entire life believing that this is normal. This is how people treat each other. Everything's tit for tat. Like, you know, like, it's just everything's calculated, everything's a transaction kind of thing almost. And yeah, like you're walking on eggshells, pacifying their emotions and all that kind of stuff. So basically everything you described earlier of, you know, the enmeshment and the belittling you and all that kind of stuff is what I went through in my childhood. And yeah, my mom pretty much like alienated me from my father as well. So she talked so much shit about him and basically like brainwashed me into hating him and being terrified of him. So I didn't learn until like I was in my mid-20s that, oh, he actually did in fact pay for child support and she just like stole that money. So yeah, it was a whole shit show. And I ended up actually having really bad chronic pain because of it. because it's all the repressed emotions. And this is not something that I had any conscious awareness of whatsoever. So basically for 4 years, I had like the worst chronic pain. There was always something going on with me. Like I was always in some form of pain in some way, shape, or form, but it really amplified from 2015 to 19, where I got it started with a wisdom tooth extraction, and then it turned into migraines, carpal tunnel syndrome, neck pain. I ended up getting shingles in my mouth. Like it was a whole thing. And I had no idea, like, and I was trying everything for pain relief. So obviously like the chiropractor, acupuncture, Botox for migraines, nerve block injections, this whole like jaw treatment thing that I ended up quitting once I found out about the mind body connection, which, long story short, is that all of the chronic pain that I was going through was repressed emotions from the childhood trauma of being raised by a narcissistic mother. And the reason that we end up repressing our emotions when we're raised by a narcissistic parent, it's because we end up believing that it is unsafe to express those emotions. So, you know, for example, like if you're happy about something, your narcissistic mother is threatened by your happiness, which is just all types of fucked up when you're an adult, like in hindsight, thinking about it, because it's like, okay, this is like a 6-year-old child, let it be happy, but whatever. And you know, or if you're like sad or whatever, like, and your mom just can't, or dad, or whoever your parent is, can't deal with your emotions, and they tell you, oh, you're so ugly when you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. You're being a big baby, big girls don't cry, big boys don't cry. You end up repressing those emotions too. So any type of emotion, all types, happy emotions, sad emotions, and there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. It's just information, which, you know, that's something that took me a long time to figure out because, you know, exactly, right? And yeah, pretty much it's the message in the child brain is, if I feel happy or if I feel sad or whatever emotion I'm feeling right now, that's going to piss my mother off. And if I piss my mother off, she's not going to love me anymore. And if she doesn't love me anymore, I'm going to die. So that creates an unconscious belief in the child brain in the formative years, when the brain is literally learning how to be a human, that emotions are going to lead to you dying. And so you end up, you know, deciding that, and this is all unconscious, but you end up deciding that it's not safe to feel these emotions. I have to repress them. And then in my case, you end up with chronic pain decades later, and hopefully realizing it, that, oh, I can actually get out of the pain by processing my emotions. But that's a whole thing too. So I rambled there, but hopefully that answered that.
It very much did. And I'd love to add to that by saying, I know some folks who've come from narcissistic parents, some of the wounds that they have include, I'm not good enough. I need to work hard and achieve in order to win this person's approval, which you never will. I also am inherently unlovable. And romantically, this is something I know a lot of avoidants have too. A lot of them will date narcissists, addicts, other people who have other issues as well, because there's this feeling of connectivity and relationship to them. They're like, oh, well, my brokenness is similar to their brokenness, so they'll get me. And it feels good to have someone who I can relate with in that regard too. So that low self-worth feels like familiarity. Whereas if they get with someone who's healthier, they're like, there is a lot of shame, because they're like, I don't feel comfortable exposing myself to someone who seemingly had a good childhood. What are they going to say about me? I don't want to be rejected by someone who seemingly had their shit together. I don't want to be judged for that. And so they often will. This is where the kicker happens. When an avoidant attacher gets with someone who they perceive to be someone who could really see and feel into them, that's when they shut down and they start to get really scared and like, nope, not for me. And that can manifest in a whole bunch of different ways. And whereas when you have come from that very secure, healthy background, the reality is, if someone comes from a healthy background, they shouldn't be judging you for all your circumstances. Your circumstances, your circumstances. But I understand that for many people who've come from narcissistic households, or even households with addicts, severe avoidance and emotional unavailability, then naturally the foregone conclusion is that, you know, oh shit, like, you know, I can't talk about this because I'm going to be judged.
Mm-hmm.
So the point
Because you're
is,
judged for everything too, right? So that fear, and that's such an important thing that, sorry to interrupt, but
No, go for it.
it's so important to recognize that healthy people are not going to judge you for your past or for your childhood or anything like that. But that fear is so real.
It is. And also, it makes sense as to why, because with the there's schema involved with this too. But basically, the idea is avoidance will usually like to get with people, like I said, who are more at their emotion. Well, I don't want to say their emotional wavelength, but let's just say there's a sense of familiarity because it's safe. Sure, there's no emotional depth to it, but for a lot of them, it feels good because it's like, oh, I feel good being with someone who's a project, someone who is the needy, incapable one, because then I can maintain my independence. They can do all the emotional heavy lifting. I don't have to worry about being vulnerable with this person because for a lot of avoidance, vulnerability equals, to your point, death. And they don't want that. So it really is that understanding that for a lot of these people, you know, the choices that they make, the partners that they pick, it's a lot of the time it's to protect themselves. It's not intending to hurt, you know, good people out there. But unfortunately, such is trauma.
Totally. And yeah, like you said earlier, it's still not an excuse for how they treat people, but it's good to understand it. And whoever has been through, you know, an avoidant situation, relationship or situationship, they still deserve to heal at the end of the day. Like, you know, so I saw someone in the comments saying that it's tearing them apart, not knowing whether their ex or their current significant other, I can't remember, is avoidant or a narcissist. And it doesn't matter. It literally does
Great.
not matter at the end of the day. You've been hurt by this person. Do your inner work and you'll figure it out whether they're a narcissist or an avoidant. And regardless, you deserve more.
I agree. I would add to that. I was going to say, like, I completely agree. This is something we've said many, many times, but even though avoidancy is not a diagnosis, and whilst narcissism isn't either, you know, as in like the behavioral stuff, at the end of the day, forget the labels. Just focus on the behavior and how it makes you feel. I found the easiest way to heal from my experience with an avoidant partner was to be like, but how did their lack of communication make me feel? How did it feel when they weren't consistent with me? How did it feel when they decided to unilaterally break up a good relationship because they told me it was a good thing, but then all of a sudden decided that it wasn't? I mean, sure, it made me feel like I must have done something wrong, but if they didn't articulate why they were breaking up in a healthy, coherent way, it's like being fired from a job without knowing what you've done wrong. And in most cases, that's illegal. And in the case of a relationship, why would you want to be with a partner who abruptly ends things but can't articulate it? Sure, I get the traumatology of it, but you've got to also think about it to yourself, which is like, do you want to be with someone who couldn't even make it work and even communicate with you as to why it wasn't working? In healthy relationships, if something's an issue, you fucking talk about it. You don't just blow it up because there's an issue. And if the issue is, I'm feeling really anxious being in a relationship with a healthy person, I got to tell you, that's not the healthy person's fault. That's something for you to work through on your own.
Exactly. I could not agree with you more. And yeah, like just to piggyback off of that point, like how do you feel as the person who has been through it? Just, you know, focus on yourself and your healing journey, because at the end of the day, you cannot control another person. You cannot mind read another person as much as you wish you can. You really can't at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter what the person's intent was. What matters is, were you hurt? Yeah. Okay. Go process that pain. And then, you know, you'll be able to tell whether someone's avoidant or narcissistic or whatever. You're going to be able to avoid these people altogether once you focus on yourself and your healing journey at the end of the day. And you're going to be able to, like, you know, feel more comfortable talking to healthy people as well, because that's a whole mind fuck too when you come from a trauma background and all that, when you're dealing with somebody who's never had that type of trauma. And like, all people have trauma more or less to some extent, but you know, there's a difference between someone who was raised like by a narcissistic parent, in my case, and my husband, for example. He does not have any sort of trauma like that whatsoever. He's one of those unicorns. And it was, you know, I'll just share now, like, it was so confusing. I didn't even know he liked me when we first started dating, because he didn't love bomb me or anything like that. But that's just healthy people. You know, they don't have to like promise you the moon. Like, they're just consistently normal, and that's awesome.
God damn, I love me some healthy people, but sometimes it's so confusing
So weird.
because they don't behave the way we've been brought up with a lot of this stuff too. By the way, I noticed that we're getting a lot of comments, which is great. I was thinking maybe it'd be a good opportunity to go through some of these too, but maybe just for efficiency's sake, if anyone has a question, please throw it into the question box, because I figured it would be a great opportunity for us to go through this, because I know you and I, we don't usually get around some of these questions and comments.
Yeah. We're
In fact,
rambling the whole time.
there was one that I saw for you that I thought would be great. I know someone I know this is kind of out of order, but I know your Travel Destiny said, how do you release all the repressed emotions from your body? I currently have chronic pain and have no clue why. I thought I'm just going to hand that straight over to you.
Sure. So don't expect to release them all in one shot, because that's like an identity crisis, and like you're definitely going to re-traumatize yourself and it's going to be a whole shit show. It is baby steps, one day at a time. And you can start with journaling. And I used to have a free guide at the link in my bio, but my entire website crashed this week. So I am rebuilding the whole thing from scratch. I know it'll be up again one day, but I don't know when that day is. But basically what you want to do is just, make a list of, all the stressful things in your life and start journaling about one of those topics every single day. Just be completely honest, throw your filter in the garbage, and, just throw your censor in the garbage, and whatever words come out of your brain, throw them onto the paper, 20-minute timer. When that timer is up, destroy the paper and notice how you feel, and notice if you can feel anything in your body. You might feel absolutely nothing at first. It might take a couple of weeks of doing this exercise to get somewhere. And it doesn't matter what you're journaling about. Like, when I was first and even to this day, I still journal. And sometimes I don't know what to journal about, but I feel a kink in my neck and I know I need to start journaling. And sometimes it's just fuck, shit, fuck for 20 minutes straight. And that still helps with my chronic pain, or like my pain flare-ups, or whatever you want to call it now, because it's been like 4.5 years that I haven't really had chronic pain to deal with. But it's not an overnight process is what I'm trying to say here. It's, you have to just really understand that your emotions are actually a physical thing, not a mental thing. And we tend to think that you have to think about your emotions, and then you end up going into a dark place. And that's a really excellent way to end up going into a dark place, when you're just overthinking and ruminating and all that kind of stuff. You have to actually physically feel your emotions in your body. And that might not make a lot of sense, especially at first. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? But, it's really, it's really just like noticing what that emotion feels like. So when you finish journaling after the 20 minutes, notice, is something happening in my body? Is there a wave of heat? Do I have a headache? Does my stomach feel like I'm dropping in a roller coaster? And then just remind yourself that you are safe. It is safe to feel these emotions. And this is just the physical manifestation of that emotion. It's not like a medical episode. And, this is under the assumption you've been medically cleared by your doctor, that you're not terminally ill, and, you don't have any crazy illnesses going on or anything like that. And, just doing that every single day is going to help you to eventually get out of chronic pain. I also have a bunch of resources at the link in my bio for anyone who is interested. I've got a community as well where you can connect with people and do the inner work and all that kind of stuff. And it does help with the chronic pain aspect of things, especially for people who were raised by narcissists. But it's definitely a process, and it's not going to be an overnight thing. Anyone who promises you that it's an overnight thing and like you're gonna do this ceremony or whatever the fuck, and then all of your pain's gonna go away, they're probably scamming you. Because at the end of the day, it's like, imagine, the way I like to describe it to my one-on-one clients is, imagine your subconscious mind is a room on TLC Hoarders, right? The TV show. And there's a whole bunch of shit in this room. Some of it's yours, some of it is not yours, some of it is your narcissistic mother's, or that avoidant fuck boy that you dated for however long that was. And every time that you journal, you're taking a little shoebox into that room with you, you're filling it in with shit, and you're throwing it out. Because part of the journaling exercise is, when you're done, the 20 minutes, you destroy that paper, because that's going to tell your subconscious mind, this no longer serves me, like this is garbage. And that's basically that little shoebox of garbage that you're taking out of that room. And eventually you'll be able to remodel the room however you want to. And you know, that's the metaphor for your life. Like you'll be able to live your life on your own terms. And you know, it might take you a while to figure out what the fuck that even means, especially, you know, if you don't even have a sense of self, because that's very common when you're raised by a narcissist. But yeah, that's in a nutshell, like the process.
10 out of 10 would recommend myself. I would add to that by saying, I know for me, my IBS was something that I realized was chronic pain and not something genetic or biological. I'd done tests and colonoscopies and all God knows what to try and fix that. It was only when I actually started journaling a lot of my emotional stuff, particularly my repressed rage, anxiety, that I noticed a huge shift over time where I wasn't having that like chronic spasms of gut pain. And I'm not trying to preach to everyone some magical, magical silver bullet cure for all this sort of stuff. We see plenty of those sort of things too. And I'm not here to be like, do this and you'll manifest your dreams. I mean, you kind of will, but the point is that,
Eventually.
well said, eventually. But I will say that I have definitely noticed that repressed emotions can cause all kinds of cacked up nonsense in the body. And there's a lot of scientific evidence to show for it as well too. I'm not about to make a sales pitch being like, here, buy my journal exercise to remove all of your chronic pain, because some of it may be physiological and some of it may genuinely be your own nervous system in disarray because of trauma. I was going to say, I've noticed our question box is filled up. Should we start tackling some of those questions?
Yeah, I can't see them, so I'll leave it to you.
Oh, goody. So here we go. Why would a narc or an avoidant say they want to stay friends and they hurt you with more gaslighting and belittling you? I'm going to start this one first by saying, well, regardless of whether it's a narc or an avoidant, I'd say it's still to maintain access and control to you. And why would they then hurt you with more gaslighting and belittling you? My answer is, if it's an avoidant attacher, they're trying to protect themselves and also to still maintain a control over the relationship. I don't mean like narc control where they're intentionally trying to control. I mean, they're trying to have a form of covert control where they feel safe in distance from you, and anytime you get close, they may belittle you to make themselves feel safe. If it's a narcissist, however, they're doing that intentionally to fuck with you, and they're doing that because they want to own and dominate the relationship.
And I will just add that either scenario is not okay. That you should not put up with that bullshit from that person regardless. Like, I don't care what the reason is for someone to be gaslighting and belittling you. It is not okay at the end of the day. If it's a narcissist, they're never going to change. If it's an avoidant, maybe there's hope for them, but they need to figure that shit out for themselves. And it's not your job to change that person.
Yes, I completely agree. And then we've got another question here too, is what should I do when an avoidance starts to pull away? Okay, so this is different from like if a narc were to pull away, because if the narc's doing that, then they're trying to get control over you, in which case I would recommend, like what you would probably say, Adriana, which is grey rocking and also making sure that you just probably consider an exit strategy. But if it's an avoidant, I don't know the kind of partner that you have or who this individual is, but the one thing I always teach my clients is if they pull away, you pull away. It's really important for you to start journaling your anxiety and your anger about how they're making you feel, not using them for as much reassurance, and getting to a place of emotional objectivity where you're like, if they're doing this, it's just them, it's not me. One thing that I know a lot of anxious attachers do is they tend to over-personalize a person's behavior towards them and think they're the problem. But if an avoidant's doing this, it's just self-protection. It's not usually about you. However, and I'm going to throw this to you, Adriana, if it was, what should I do if a narcissist starts to pull away? I'll throw that over to you.
Just run. Like there's no reason to be in a relationship with a narcissist ever for any reason, for any length of time. And like, okay, if you share children with them, like you're fucked. But no, I'm joking. If you share children with them, you just stick to whatever it says in the contract regarding custody. But yeah, if a narcissist starts pulling away, believe them. Believe exactly who they are. Believe the fact that they are pulling away, and you go live your best life without this bullshit, because you do not need to deal with that crap at the end of the day.
100 billion%. I got another question here, which is, are they miserable even when they keep showing people they are happy and accomplishing things? Well, I can answer for the avoidant part of things. Sometimes they do the toxic positivity thing after a breakup. So in other words, after a breakup with someone they cared about but then shut down with, they may have a tendency to do a few things. One of them could be, you know, showing on their socials how they feel so relieved to be out of this relationship, as if to say, like, you know, you in the relationship with the problem for all their anxiety, and it's not actually them. But they may come to realize a little while after the fact that their feelings for you come back and they regret their decision. So they may feel incredible shame, blame, and also guilt for how they handled the end of that experience. And they may then start dating other people to try and get over you, or they may try and come back to you. But typically, what I'd say is because they're very emotionally dysregulated, they tend to, like, after the breakup, they tend to be relieved, okay, feel guilt and resentment and also shame come back in. And that's when it takes them to a bit of a dark place where they may try and, you know, try and navigate that discomfort through all kinds of things, but you won't really see it on the surface, because we have to remember that avoidantly traded people are very good at compartmentalization and not also expressing themselves in a traditional way. I'm going to throw this over to you. Are narcissists miserable even when they keep showing people that they're happy and accomplishing things?
Totally, totally. Like narcissists are not happy people at the end of the day. Like they are miserable. They, you know, they're very insecure people, and there's so much overlap with avoidance. It's just it can get so confusing, but yeah, they absolutely are like not happy people. They will pretend that they are happy. They will tell you that they are happy. And what you have to understand with narcissists is that anything that they say or do is literally done for the purpose of getting a reaction out of you, right? It's for getting supply out of you. So they are going to tell you, oh, I'm so happy with my life now that you're out of it because fuck you, this, that, and the other. And like, you made me so miserable or whatever. And they're just saying that to get a rise out of you so that you engage in a conversation with them, and they can start their whole web of bullshit and manipulation games, and the whole cycle of abuse can start over again. And you know, it's bullshit either way. Like it's just not worth it. It is not worth having that conversation, or you know, even trying to get closure from the narcissist or anything like that, because at the end of the day, they are going to try to manipulate you. It's literally like, you know, it's like asking a thief who just stole from you, like, why did you do it? You know, like they're gonna lie. They're not gonna be honest. So it's, you know, imagine like money is supply and a narcissist is a thief, and you know, it's just you want to just avoid that person. And that doesn't make you an avoidant if you're avoiding a narcissist.
That just makes you a normal person, like, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I asked a client yesterday, do you lock your door at your house? Obviously, right? Like that is you protecting yourself from the narcissist. So you have to lock them out of your life altogether.
100 billion percent. And this beautifully relates to another question I got, which is blocking an avoidant for healing a good idea? I blocked them and deleted their number. Abso-fucking-lutely. I got to tell you, a lot of the strategies we teach people who are in narcissistic relationships applies beautifully to avoidant relationships, but I use different verbiage because the two are very different. One's an active abuser, the other one is a covert abuser. And either way, again, it's not a case of like they're intending to hurt you with the avoidant, but the impact is still shit. When it comes to an avoidant breakup, which is sometimes quite similar to a narcissistic breakup, where it can be very emotionally painful for a lot of people, I have a bit of a nuanced answer. I always say blocking is ideal, but if you can't do it, try and find low contact for now, just to sort of help yourself through it. Because similar to breaking up with a narc, you can feel like it's an addiction. You can feel like you're missing this person because of the trauma bond, and you can feel incredibly, you know, sad and lonely and miss that person tremendously, because even a narcissist wasn't always all bad. They had some parts of them which you really liked, even if a lot of it was a facade. So we have to remember too that having limited access to your drug, in this case the avoidant, is part of that healing process. But similar to heavy addiction, you don't want to go cold turkey immediately, because it can be quite jarring for your body. That's why some people need to take it very slowly to lean off that sort of stuff. So I'm going to throw that over to you, Adriana. Is blocking that narcissist for healing a good idea?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm also going to add, like, you definitely want to go cold turkey if it's a situation of abuse and intentional abuse. the detoxing process is gonna suck regardless. So whether you're detoxing from a drug or detoxing from a narcissist, like, it's all repressed emotions at the end of the day.
Yes.
And it's your nervous system just not wanting to feel that way. So, you know, if this person's getting physically abusive with you, you have to fucking go cold turkey off of that person. Like, because, you know, your life is worth more than this other person's agenda at the end of the day. And yeah, like, you know, some cases you can't get away as soon as possible, right? Like, maybe you still live with the person, maybe you have to get all of your ducks in a row, your finances in a row, whatever, all that kind of stuff. Great. That is okay, but make sure that your physical safety is number one at the end of the day. If they start getting violent with you, obviously authorities, you know, like, that, it's never okay for somebody to put their hands on you in any way, shape, or form, or to even threaten to do it. And yeah, definitely, just to answer your actual question that you asked, you absolutely want to block a narcissist. There's no reason to speak to the narcissist once that relationship is over. You have to believe them for exactly who they have shown you to be. And, you know, you have to also, you know, there's so much grieving involved in, you know, breaking up with or going no contact with a narcissist, if it's a family member or your mother or whoever. And it's like, a big part of the grieving process is grieving who you thought that person was. And it's okay to grieve somebody who's still alive. It's not just for when someone passes away, it's also for when the idea of that person ends up passing away, because you see the truth of who they really are and not the idea of who they portrayed themselves to be, so that they could gain your trust in those early love bombing stages of the relationship.
I couldn't agree more. And I got to tell you, as someone who has had experience dating avoidant attachers, pre-healing my trauma and post-healing my trauma, and by trauma I mean all the dysregulated emotions in my body, I found the recovery process was 10 times easier when I wasn't also still stuck in my crap. When I'd gotten rid of a lot of that stuff, post breakup with avoidant attachers became a lot easier because I knew what I was dealing with. I'd had steps to deal with it. And I also wasn't sitting in my crap, because there was no crap to sit in except just the pain that I was in. And I knew that it was going to pass. Like, I've had, for a lot of people who are holding on to a lot of their pain, the recovery from these processes, including dating a narcissist, can sometimes take years. And sometimes for people who don't have access to these tools, decades. I've seen some people who are in so much pain off the back of these experiences. And maybe it's true, they, you know, they were with a narcissist or an avoidant for like no more than like, you know, a few weeks, and they really fell in love with them. And they're in so much pain off the back of it, and maybe shaming themselves, being like, but I wasn't in a relationship with this person. Why am I feeling this way? The reality is that our grief for people is not something that is sometimes logical. We may think, oh, well, you know, I should grieve a family member more than this. I should be grieving, you know, my best friend or my husband or wife of X number of years more than this stranger who I knew for a few weeks. Unfortunately for us, when we're hit with like a lot of dopamine and oxytocin early on in that honeymoon phase, and it's also someone that we really genuinely connect with, and it's just such a rush, if they leave our life and the suddenness hits us like a freight train, that can really impact our nervous system in more ways than someone you've known and cared about for a much longer period of time, where there's greater acceptance of who they are, they don't appear so glossy. So I just want to throw that out there and say, please normalize the fact that just because you knew a stranger for a few days, or even a narcissist, doesn't invalidate your pain.
100%. Grief does not have to make any sense, right? It's how your nervous system is doing. So the last thing you want to do is shame yourself for how much you're grieving this person. Emotions, you don't need to reason with your emotions, all right? That's intellectualizing them, that is ruminating over them. What you need to do is feel those emotions. And the best way to grieve somebody, whether it's a narcissist, whether it's someone who passed away, whether it's an avoidant who swooped into your life and then fucked right off 3 days later, and you're finding yourself filled with all this grief, is to actually feel all of the grief that you are feeling. And it's not going to take overnight. It might take, you know, a while to actually feel that grief. And, you know, you might take weeks, days of processing it. And that's completely okay. You can't put like a timeline on it. It's just, you know, you have to, the way I see it is like, your goal is to release the grief. Then look at it like working out. If your goal is to build muscle, you're not just going to go to the gym one time and, you know, lift weights one time in your life and be like, okay, I'm done working out for the rest of my life. Where are my biceps? Why do I still have my spaghetti arms? What's going on, right? So it's the same thing with your emotions. You can't just, you know, think that you're going to go through the grief one time and be okay tomorrow. It's going to come in waves, and that's okay. Like, just allow yourself to feel it whenever you are feeling it. Obviously, do not process your emotions in front of a narcissist, because they are going to use that as supply. You know, it's something that you want to do on your own time, by yourself preferably, or with a trusted therapist or coach or mentor of some sort. But you know, you do not want to do any sort of emotional processing around a narc or anyone. That's not safe.
Couldn't agree more. And with another great question, I'm going to combine two questions together, because I think I know your answer. I know what you're going to say, and I can't wait for it. So the two questions I want to bring up are: can an avoidant attacher change? Versus, why will narcs never change? It's hard to wrap my head around someone being completely unredeemable, especially someone I've cared about. Adriana, do you want to fire away on the narc one?
Sure. So just because you care about somebody, it doesn't mean that that care is going to transfer over to them and that they're going to take that and be like, oh, I should redeem myself. Like, they're narcissists do not care. Like, they just want supply at the end of the day. That is what they care about the most out of anything. That is what makes them feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. And that is all they want from people. So you have to believe them. You have got to believe them. And you have to grieve who that person presented themselves to be. Narcissists absolutely do not change. I can give you my own anecdotal proof of that myself, but take this with a grain of salt if you don't feel like believing me. But my narcissistic mother went to her deathbed with all of her bullshit. She even gave me the death glare when she was like dying, like actively dying on her deathbed. And like, she couldn't talk, she couldn't drink water, she couldn't eat. Like, she was literally wasting away on her deathbed. And she didn't have the energy to do any of that, but she had the energy to give me the death glare. All right? Like, the look that she has given me my entire life. The nurse was literally standing right beside me, and she's like, oh, is that what you had to deal with your entire life growing up with her? I'm like, yep. And she's like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, thank you. Like, this is the first time a fucking medical professional in this whole situation of my mom dying has actually validated me. And because she saw it for herself, that that evil look, that evil glare. So they do not change. You can spend a lot of time hoping they're going to change, but you're going to be wasting a lot of time, right? What I would recommend you to do is focus on yourself and your healing journey, and journal about how frustrating it is that this person's not changing. Because at the end of the day, it's repressed anger. Like, you can't control another person, and you can't project your own empathy onto another person. You cannot keep expecting you from other people. That is like the most dangerous thing you can do, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist, is expecting yourself. And what makes this like even more of a fucking contradiction is that narcissists mirror you in the love bombing phase. So they basically are you, and you pretty much end up falling in love with yourself. And that also adds to why you're expecting yourself from this person, because of those amazing conversations you had at first. But you know, like, it was all bullshit. So you have to take it for what it is. You have to accept the reality that there's nothing in your power that you can do to change this person. You are not that powerful. You do not want to be that powerful, I promise you. And, you know, each individual adult is responsible for themselves and their own healing journey, and whether or not they're going to change. And if they're being really shitty, it is up to them to decide, hey, I want to stop being shitty. But that's the thing with narcissists. They don't go around thinking like, oh, I'm treating people like shit. My loved ones are suffering at my hands. I should probably go to therapy, or, you know, talk to somebody about this and maybe like figure out how to get empathy. They do not fucking do that. They're looking for their next fix of supply. It's like a drug addict looking for their next fix of a drug. Like, they don't care about anything else except, you know, a drug addict can actually get help and support for, you know, getting off of that drug. Whereas a narcissist, like, there's nothing that's going to convince them that like supply isn't worth it. So you just have to let them be a thunderstorm of bullshit in their own little miserable corner of the universe, unfortunately. And I know that that's not what a lot of people want to hear, but you only have one life on this planet. Do you really want to waste your time on like a very, very fruitless exercise?
Yeah, and I'm about to say something similar with regards to avoidant attachers, though there is a lot of difference and nuance that I want to throw in with that one too. But what I will say is people change when they realize they are in so much pain that they cannot continue to be operating the way that they are. There is evidence of people with narcissism who do reconcile a lot of this shit and start to realize, fuck, I can see that I'm a problem and I need to work on this. But I gotta tell you, the research and the number of people who make this miraculous self-awareness is frighteningly small. And also, it's highly unlikely that your spouse, parent, friend will be an exception to the rule. And also, even then, similar to what Adriana was saying about how when you're going on a healing journey, you really need to take it slowly, because trying to race through and work through your emotions can be an existential crisis. For many people with narcissistic personality disorder, and also for avoidant attachers too, if you have suppressed that much emotion, it can cause you an existential crisis. When you come face to face with your inner child and you're not happy with what you see, and you realize you've suppressed all that shame, rage, disappointment, guilt, and you've been hating on yourself that entire time, I think the term was it can cause existential collapse, where some people can get really suicidal. And so if you're dealing with a person like this in therapy and you're trying to help them through this, you are taking this baby steps at a time, because if they go into existential collapse, that can cause them to not only want to end things for themselves straight away, but also to go straight back to being like, no, I prefer being a narc because that was safe and comfortable for me. So just want to put that out there, that it's, you know, a healing journey is not for the faint of heart. You have to face yourself. And for people who hate themselves, that is, you know, they've got every reason to want to stay the way they are. Now that leads me on to talk about avoidant attachers. Yes, these people can absolutely change. But similar to what Adriana was saying about being involved with a narcissist, you can't empathize a person to change. A lot of these individuals, if you encourage them to change, will resent you for it. No one changes for another person. A lot of avoidant attachers usually only realize they need to change when they realize they are the common denominator. When they've been in a situation where they've caused so much harm to their loved ones that they're like, fuck, what have I done? And that self-awareness starts to kick in. But we also have to remember too that a lot of avoidant attachers also are very good at denial, rationalizing. They're hyper intelligent, but haven't really developed a lot of that emotional maturity. So often they can really do a great job of invalidating their own reality and making it out like they're not the problem, that it must be their previous relationships or the partner that they're still with. So please bear in mind that usually the only way for a lot of these people to change, and it's going to sound cruel, is you need to officially end things with them to sometimes make them actually feel the pain of how their actions contributed to where they are at right now. Because if they don't receive that, then how are they going to learn? And sure, you may not want to be the one to feel like I had to leave them in order to change to be with the next person. I get that fear very much. I really do. But just remember that change doesn't happen overnight. It's taken Adriana and I years to be the people that we are today. And for an avoidant attacher to work through all the stuff that they haven't done, like even if they tell you, and a lot of them will say they're going to therapy or they're seeing a therapist, which is great. I'm really happy when they do that. A lot of avoidants seek out therapy, which is great. Not as many as anxious attachers, but they do still seek it out. But key thing I want to say is, please bear in mind that going to therapy is like going to the gym. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And if they are on that healing journey, we don't know what kind of practitioner they have. We don't know what they're working on specifically. Most of these people come in for unrelated issues like ADHD, anxiety, because their spouse is getting mad at them and they're tired of, you know, waiting around for them to change. And they're like, shit, I want to save this. How do I save this? And of course, the therapist may see presenting issues which don't actually sound like avoidancy. So please bear in mind that don't hold out on the hope that if what you're seeing, it really is a case of what you see is what you get.
Yes, 100%. Could not agree more. And yeah, like I'm just gonna make a point about the very few percentage of narcissists who change or whatever. usually they're in a legal situation where like they are mandated to go to some sort of therapy and they have been starved of all sources of supply. Like that's really one of the only circumstances where that will ever happen. So your mother is not going to change. Your narcissistic mother, your narcissistic father is probably never going to change. And you never want to hold out hope for that at the end of the day, because they've been the adult the entire time that you've existed, especially if it's your narcissistic parent. They were the adult the whole time. It was their job to give you a safe place to, see what a beautiful place the world is, or whatever reason people bring children onto this planet. And they did not do that. They did not give you that sense of safety whatsoever. So, you owe it to yourself to heal for you. And that the other person's healing journey, whether they're avoidant, whether they're narcissistic, whether they're just have their head up their ass, whatever the situation is, that's on them. Someone who's going to change is going to change because they want to, because they're in that much pain. And narcissists usually will never self-reflect to the point where they realize that they're even in pain. They're just going to keep lying to themselves and lying to everybody else around them. And that's just how they're going to function. Maybe one day when everybody on this planet completely stops supplying narcissists, maybe then we'll have some more data, but that's like a much larger scale, and the algorithm doesn't like me, so can't really do anything about it.
You may have to write you may have to do a few more reels and TikToks on it in the daily life of a narcissistic mother.
Yeah.
They're great, by the way. I just want to say,
Thank you.
I love those videos. They're really good.
Thank you.
I can definitely understand now some of the sheer hell that a lot of people have gone through as a consequence of that. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think it's really good that you've been putting that out there. But I want to add to what you said too about how only when they've lost every ounce of supply will a narcissist change. Same with an avoidant. You have to understand that some of these people are so damn stubborn and set in their denial sometimes. And denial is just a coping mechanism for a lot of people who don't want to deal with reality. They have to realize they have lost everything and everyone. There's a really good book actually written by Neil Strauss, who has a narcissistic mother. He is infamous for writing a book called The Game, which is all about how to be a pickup artist. And interestingly enough, he's actually not only got avoidant attachment, but he also has sex addiction. And in his case, he had to confront all of this because he was in love with a woman who he cheated on. And he was like, how can a married man not a married man, how can a man who loves his partner cheat on them? And his journey to work through this is covered in a book called The Truth. And it's really good if you're looking to understand the extremes of avoidant patterns of behavior, because it really goes to show how, answering another question, do narcissistic parents cause avoidancy? Absolutely. And in this book, it talks all about that, because it demonstrates how growing up in an enmeshed family household, being constantly compared to his dad and being demeaned, and also hating feeling controlled, but this is a man who grew up with low self-esteem, low self-worth, a lot of underlying depression and anxiety, generalized, not disordered, where he was feeling like anytime his self-esteem took a hit, he needed to go out searching for his own narcissistic supply to try and make him feel better about himself. But unlike a true narcissist, for a lot of him, this was just acting out because he hadn't grown up figuring out how to actually develop healthy relationships. So please bear in mind that, these situations can be incredibly nuanced, but the reasons for change can vary for a lot of people. And even for Neil, his journey of recovery took him about 3 damn long years to work through, and it was on and off. He was in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, going to all kinds of different therapies. And even in the book, it describes how he didn't believe a lot of this stuff at first because he was so set in his ways about why he was okay to have, swinger party events, be doing these thruples and all these polyamorous sort of situationships too, which, by the way, brings me to another point, which is a lot of avoidant attachers love non-monogamous sort of situations because it does give them that sense of freedom that they've been yearning for. And also this adds to another thing too, is you can't really have healthy communication with some of these people because they perceive it as manipulation and control. And that's why, again, similar to what you're saying, Adriana, there's such a huge overlap between narcissists and avoidance because they react very similarly to healthy styles of communication.
Yeah, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And Regardless, I just want to really emphasize that whatever the person that you're confused about, whether they're avoidant or narcissistic or a sex addict or whatever, they are using other people for their gratification or for, the ego boost or for, their own selfish purposes. And what you need to understand is that nobody's entitled to you in any way, shape, or form. You are the boss of your life, not anybody else, not the narcissist, not the avoidant, not anybody, not your mother. And, like, you're your own autonomous person. They are their own autonomous person. And, the best gift that you can give to yourself is just doing your own inner work and focusing on you and not focusing on like trying to change another person, because regardless, what they're doing to people is not okay. It's causing a lot of pain, and you can continue staying in that pain, or you can, go within, which is not something that a narcissist is really going to do. I definitely think probably an avoidant could do it for sure. And, even in my case, like I'm secure attachment now, but like that was after so much healing work, right? And I came from being a disorganized attachment style person, which I guess that's like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was super fucked up, I guess. But the thing is, like, the person literally has to do their own work and figuring it out for themselves, like, and the narcissist isn't going to do that.
I completely agree. Also, just out of respect to your time, Adriana, how much time do you have left?
I do. I'm just seeing the time now. I do have to go soon, but I can squeeze in a few more minutes, maybe.
Awesome. So let's continue. I got a really good question here, which you kind of answered a little bit earlier. How do you know if you're justified in cutting narcs out or if you're just avoidant and running away? I feel like this can have a lot of depth to it. Do you want to tackle this one first?
Yeah. You don't need to be justified in cutting somebody out of your life. Okay. If someone is hurting you in any way, shape, or form, and even if you're confused and you think like you're hurting them or whatever, like you're still justified. Like there is no law that says you cannot cut this person out of your life. Like you're allowed, you don't have to justify it. You're not doing it for no fucking reason. So that's the first thing you really have to understand, that if you're thinking of cutting somebody out of your life and you're worried about whether you're justified in doing this or not, like, is there a legal obligation that you have to be in contact with this person? Like you share children with them or something? Because that's, maybe some minimal contact would be required. But, if you want to cut somebody out of your life, you can cut somebody out of your life. It doesn't matter if it's because they're a narcissist or like, and if you're worried that you're doing it because you think you're an avoidant, like you're self-reflecting already, right? And that already means that like, no, something's wrong with this fucking relationship and you are 100% justified. You're justified in cutting anybody out of your life. Like you have no obligation. Nobody is entitled to having you in their life. It is a fucking privilege to have you in their life. Okay. And if they're disrespecting you, if they are abusing you, if they are avoidantly attached and, they're hot and cold or whatever, you fucking deserve so much better than that. And if you're actually worried that you're avoidant and, like that's the reason you want to cut this person out of your life, go self-reflect about it. Go do some journaling about it. Go speak to a therapist or speak to a coach or work with somebody and go figure that out. Because at the end of the day, you are allowed to cut people out of your life. No one's entitled to you. So I will stop rambling.
No, I love that. I agree. Look, I'm going to express a hard truth. You're exactly right. You're allowed to cut out anyone in your life. Now, here's the rub. You're also going to have to deal with the guilt and shame of your choices, of your actions too. Meaning that there will be some people who you cut out of your life who, quite frankly, deserve to be out of your life, like Adriana was saying. However, if your tendency is to be avoidantly traded and you are backing away from someone who's actually not all that bad, but you're uncomfortable being around them, that is where I think, to Adriana's point, you may want to self-reflect a little harder than usual, because it is so damn easy to cut the right people out and keep the wrong people in. It is so easy to nitpick, destroy, and also think, oh, you know, it wouldn't be feeling this hard if I was with the right person. There is no such thing as the right person. You know, it's so damn easy to get so justified in your logic as to why you should cut out someone when things have been going well, even though you've got so much tremendous anxiety because you feel unsafe being in a vulnerable relationship. It is understandable that if you have grown up so, you know, in so much pain that you don't feel comfortable expressing that pain to another person because you feel like they're going to let you down, you feel like they're going to judge you, I totally get it. But in which case, to Adriana's point, maybe speak to a specialist, because you could be ruining the very thing that you've been yearning for this entire time. As for whether or not this person's an abuser, this is where, I think having really good understanding of your values, having a really good understanding as to your boundaries is so damn important, because there is a difference between someone who is chronically gaslighting you, chronically manipulating you, chronically abusing you and making you feel like a piece of shit, versus someone who you've just met recently or been in a relationship for quite a while, who, quite frankly, you are turning crazy because you don't feel comfortable being around them. So you opt for hot and cold behavior because it feels safer to not have to open up with them. That is a very big difference between the people you choose to call your company.
Exactly. And I will also add that if it is a situation where you are avoidant and, you know, you're thinking of cutting someone off, maybe you're doing them a favor. And then you can go self-reflect and deal with whatever emotions come up for you. Because, you know, at the end of the day, that person does not deserve to be put through the ringer with your bullshit if that is the case. You know what I mean? So just throwing that out there. And I do have to go now, but I will also end with one thing, that most people are not worth knowing. You know, like, most people are really not worth having that enmeshed in your life either way. So it's always justified to cut people out, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, obviously, it doesn't, no one loves being cut out from anyone's life too. My last piece is, obviously it hurts. And look, I've got people who are every day coming to me because it really hurts too. I'm fortunately at a point where I can step back from this and look at this a bit objectively and just say, of course, no one deserves to feel like they're being rejected and cut out. However, it's a good opportunity for everyone to reflect on this and be like, let's take a look at this with a bit more of nuance and discernment, because it's not always just me or just them. It's usually a bit more nuanced, unless, of course, you're dating or being in a relationship with an abuser, in which case there's a bit more, there's a bit more of a side to that street than the average sort of situation. All right. Adriana, thank you very much. Where can people find you if they want to see or speak to you or work with you?
Of course. Thank you for having me live here. You can find me on Let's Get Your Shift Together here on Instagram. It's spelled exactly Let's Get Your Shift Together. There are so many scam accounts, like, just, you know, following people back and shit like that. I will never DM you first, okay? And if you want to work with me, go to the link in my bio on my actual profile. I offer one-on-one coaching, and I also have an amazing community membership where you can connect with fellow survivors, get access to all of my tools, and it's a fraction of the cost of working with me one-on-one. I highly recommend it. It's a freaking amazing place. If you're not in it, you're missing out on a lot. That's all I'm going to say. And Ken, how can people find you?
They can find me by getting free readings with me. I'm joking.
That's hilarious.
I'm joking. I'll never offer free readings to anyone. I'm too pricey for that shit. So you can find me here at kenreed.co. So as a counselor, I can work with people overseas. However, I'm fully booked. But my teammates are available. Kate and Sydney, they're very familiar with narcissism and avoidancy and how to heal and work through this. It's also important to understand that because I am fully booked and there is a lot of interest to work with me, I am actually releasing a course called Heartbreak Grief Relief, which releases on the 30th of May. I'm offering it at the moment at half the cost as a pre-release. And it really is just going to go through the tips, tools, strategies I've used to heal from breakups. And it's very appropriate for anyone who's going through an avoidant or narcissistic breakup. But I want to make this very clear, not a substitute for therapy. Is not going to be a miracle cure overnight. Simply just tools to help ease the journey. And with that, I will let everyone go. Thank you. Oh, let's get your shit together, or let's get your shift. Shift with an F, not shit, even though it sounds similar.
Just click on my profile here and follow me. You'll find me.
And I'll also tag Adriana in this video too when it goes on to what used to be IGTV.
Yeah.
All right. So good chatting with you, Adriana. Have a wonderful
Likewise.
night in Canada, and I can't wait to do this again with you.
Sounds good. See you later.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.